everyone. Welcome back to another continuing education check-in. As you can see, Sonia and I, we've secured another guest. We're really excited to have you on today. And so I don't want to reveal your name. Can you introduce yourself? How do you know us? What is your relationship to the podcast? And if you do listen to the podcast, what have been some of your favorite moments or parts of it?
Or things you disagree with that we've talked about.
Oh, we're gonna get right into that. Okay.
This is your intro.
I think I know you through mutual friends.
Yeah.
And then I know you through educational experiences.
Wait, we have to... Okay.
So we'll start with your name.
My name is Zane.
And what is your relationship to this podcast?
Didn't know about this podcast at first. And then I feel like 5-ish episodes in, I was talking to a friend and she was like, oh my goodness, like, did you know so-and-so was like making a podcast? And I was like, no, I didn't. Like, I need to like get my hands on that. And I've been an avid listener ever since, I'd say.
Yeah.
We got him hooked.
Yeah. So Zane has listened to every single episode that has come out so far. We really appreciate you. That means a lot. Were you a big podcast listener beforehand? Like, did you enjoy listening to our podcast? Do you have a favorite part?
But beforehand, I've actually only listened to one episode of one podcast before.
Wow, okay.
And so, yeah.
So it's hard to know if we're like even a good podcast. We're just like the only podcast.
Pretty much. But I think that makes it
But we keep
special
them coming
because-
back, so
Yeah, that's
I
true.
feel like that says something.
Okay. Do you have a favorite moment, something you disagree with?
Favorite?
You've told me something you've disagreed with.
Favorite
if
end
you want to share. Or share whatever.
I don't think anything off the top, but I think it's kind of fun that like, because I do have a personal connection in a sense. Like I think a lot of times you consume media and it's always like, oh, this is like the baseline, like what it is, and sometimes I don't know if you like are able to have more of a like dialogue or question it a little bit. But I feel like because there's a little bit of a connection with you two, then it feels like, oh, like I can take this, or it's like, oh, I listened to that, and it's like maybe like like. Not so sure about that, but like that. Like you
He says he
can have like a
disagrees.
little bit more of a dialogue with it, which I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool and fun.
Yeah. Do you want to give a little bit of information about your background? Like, what are you doing in life, and is there?
What is your relationship status?
Yeah, currently I'm single. So ladies
But not
out
for
there-
long.
Exactly. Yeah, I was gonna say if you like what you see, then
Slide into his DMs. Actually,
Yeah.
instead of tagging our account, we will make the special exception, and we will also tag Zane here.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. So follow us on Instagram. You'll get his account that way. Dude, you're gonna blow up after this.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I don't have that many followers, so this will be interesting to see where it goes.
Okay. So, jumping into today's topic. So, Sonia told me that this is a topic we should talk about. And you mentioned that, Zane, when you first landed on your trip here, this was like one of the first conversations you had right off the plane. And so I'm wondering, how did this even come up? Today, we're talking about the timing of marriage. And we're talking about what it's like to try to optimize for marriage, trying to either speed things up or wait a long time, and then also thinking about what goes into the thinking behind getting married, whether that's a timing question or trying to check boxes off a list. How did you guys even start talking about this?
Well, I feel like when Zane landed, I feel like actually it has nothing to do with Zane even. I feel like in general life, like I just talk about marriage a lot, and like the timing of it just like more so to like bounce ideas off of like different people to see like, you know, if people are wanting to do different things, like to hear out like why they want to do different things. So I feel like, I don't know, Zane, you can agree or disagree, but I feel like it comes up in conversation a lot, especially with me and like other friends. So I feel like that's how it came up. Yeah, marriage. Because like, you know, I don't know, I feel like it's trending right now. Like everybody's been getting married like really young, like celebrities, like everyone. And that's why like literally like, I think I texted Ethan at like 8 a.m. and I was like, hey, I got the topic.
Yeah.
Got the guest and I got the topic.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how the topic came up.
Definitely. Zane, anything to add?
Um,
Do you feel like you have good input for this?
I feel like I have decent input for myself.
Okay.
I feel like yeah, I'm at a place where I'm pretty happy with who I am and the path I'm living for myself. But I think the key thing though too is that like I recognize that like the life I'm living does not necessarily generally apply to like
Oh, but that's
everyone else. If that makes sense.
That's fine. We're kind of here to just like hear different viewpoints. I feel like a lot of times I always tell Ethan this, like off camera as well, that like we always end up agreeing with each other, even if it's like the end segment or like whatever it is. Like I feel like we usually see eye to eye.
Yeah.
So like I feel like we're really like looking forward to hearing some different ideas.
And that's why like Sonia's always asking what people disagree with.
Not because I'm trying to start a fight, okay? It's just because I'm curious.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so I think the way I want to start this off is we're first going to talk about self-maximizing while in a relationship and how that can relate to marriage. And so we're going to rate how much of a self-maximizer we are, just in general or when it comes to relationships.
Wait, before we do that, do you want to just quickly give us like your definition of self-maximizers so that we're all like on the same page?
Yeah, definitely. So self-maximizing when it comes to a relationship, your thinking is, can I do better? Can I find someone better? And that's what a self-maximizer always thinks, because they're trying to find someone who checks off every single box that they have, every single possibility. And if they even get the feeling that the person that they're with or the person that they're interested is not good enough, it sends them into this mindset of, oh, maybe I need to start looking again.
Okay.
Maybe there's an issue in this relationship.
Okay, so we're rating how much self-maximizing we like to do on a scale of 1 to 10.
Yeah.
10 is like, there's always someone better out there.
Right.
And 1 is like, I'm happy to settle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Should we count? Are people feeling ready? We can give you a minute, Zane.
Okay.
I'm ready.
I'm ready also. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Damn, one hand.
Whoa, is this like a guy-girl thing? That's okay.
Well,
so if you're listening, Zane and I are at a 7. Sonia is at a 2, and I don't believe you. I think you need to put these glasses
No,
on.
no. For the first time ever, I'm rejecting Ethan's suggestion. You can keep these to yourself. All I've talked about on this podcast is literally how much I love my project boys.
Yep.
I like someone like who is not very good, and I like to improve them. So I'm not looking for something better. I'm looking to choose something that I like and make it the best it could possibly be. So it's not necessarily like I'm like, oh, you're not checking my boxes, blah, 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 blah. It's more so like, oh, like what can we do together? How can I like make the most out of what I have? So yeah, keep your Delulu glasses to yourself.
But do you feel like you have a big checklist?
I feel like I have a very big checklist, like just because of like cultural reasons and stuff like that. And like I'm a little like, I guess picky, but I feel like everybody's picky about like certain aspects or traits that they're looking for. But I feel like if I found someone that meets like, you know, a certain percentage of that checklist, especially as I'm getting older, I'm like more accepting to like, you know, be open to liking somebody that doesn't check off all the boxes.
Okay, and like in that train of thought, would they have to like at least check off all the deal breakers and then the rest is okay that you're willing to flex on?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, what about you, Zane? A 7.
Yeah, so in my head, this is kind of an interesting question because I feel like for me, historically, I haven't been in like that many relationships, but I'd say like by the time I'm going into like a relationship with someone, it's like a pretty like I feel like I figured the other person out to like a good enough extent where I'm like pretty confident that like it is gonna work. So in a sense, I feel like I do a lot of like the self-maximizing before I even go on like romantic explorations with people. So like I think by the time like committing to someone, it's not necessarily like a lot of thoughts, at least historically. A lot of thoughts about like, oh, is there something that's out there better? Because by the time I'm committing to someone, there's like enough interest that like that is someone I'm like pretty interested in, and that's how I see it moving forward.
Yeah, I love that perspective because I feel like if you are a self-maximizer, if that's just your personality, that is probably the best way to be a self-maximizer. Like, do it early. Make sure that the person that you're getting into a relationship with is like the person that checks off all the boxes, and then that way the relationship's going to be grounded and strong and you're not questioning it anymore. For me, I also gave it a 7. I think as a guy, I'm not proud to say this, but like I'm thinking, is there someone better? And I think for me, something that I have had to learn recently is I'm always going to have those thoughts. It doesn't matter who I'm with. It doesn't matter like if I'm with the most ideal girl. I'm going to have those thoughts, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, I need to make sure that I'm choosing my partner every day. And no matter like when these thoughts come, like I'm going to acknowledge it, but then I'm going to like put it to the side and I'm going to focus on how to be the best partner I can every day. And I think that's the other side of self-maximizing, where to like reframe that thinking, it's important to think about, instead of what can the other person give me, how can I be the best version of myself and maximize the relationship.
I just want to like pause you there for a second, because you said it was like a guy girl thing, that thinking there's always something better out there. Dude, have you been on like TikTok for even a second? You'll always like, every time I've been in a relationship and I'm like scrolling through social media, there's always some girl's boyfriend who's doing more. He's buying her better gifts, he's treating her better. Like there's always someone better out there. So I don't think that girls don't think that there's something better out there. But I feel like, I don't know, maybe we're not so focused on like superficial things. And like, I feel like Sarah sort of talked about this when we talked about how important attractiveness is.
Episode 20.
I was waiting for that. But it's just that we're more ready, like, kind of like what Zane was saying, that when we choose someone, we like choose them, like with their flaws, with their shortcomings, and like we choose to just like make that work, even though we know we can get better.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes we can. So.
Okay. So I guess the next thing is, a lot of times, so most of the time, if you're not a self-maximizer, maybe it leads you to wanting to get married sooner, or like rush into things sooner, just because you're more sure about the person, you have less doubts, and you want to keep the relationship moving along. And what are your thoughts about that? Like, what are the pros and cons when things are moving along pretty quick?
I'm feeling kind of called out because I just said I'm not a self-maximizer. And now you're saying, you know what, you're not picky, so you're ready to settle down sooner.
Okay.
And that's completely not what it is. I feel like there could be other reasons that people want to get married sooner.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to do with, like, settling sooner. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's, like, I don't know, like, biological clocks. And, like, there's, like, you know, like, scientific reasons for wanting to settle down sooner.
I think like I think you're right, Sonia, and I shouldn't make a generalization like that. But a lot of times when people are rushing in a relationship or just moving along a little quicker, they have to put the self-maximizing side aside.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when you are self-maximizing in the relationship, the whole relationship slows down, because when you're having self-maximizing thoughts, you like draw away a little bit.
Yeah, so you can keep your options open a little bit.
Yeah, and so I guess like I was more referring to the general trend, not that there aren't other factors.
Okay.
And so let's just say like a relationship is speeding up.
Okay.
So you're like reaching checkpoint, like after checkpoint really quickly. What are the pros and cons behind that?
Well, this is not a situation that I've personally been in, so I can't really speak from experience, but I would think that, I don't know, I guess the pros of it is like you're maximizing on like how much you love each other. I feel like it's like, you know, you're like maximizing on that honeymoon stage. You're like just taking everything when you're younger, you're happier, you have more time to spend with each other if you're like really in love with that person. And like those are all good things, because like why would you want to be apart from somebody that you really like? Cons is like, you know, you're in the honeymoon phase, so like you actually haven't figured out if like, you know, are they checking off all your boxes? If you're still having those like self-maximizing like doubts, like, so you haven't given yourself enough time to like see the person without the rose-tinted glasses on.
Yeah. I feel like in that situation, you could be putting a lot of pressure on the relationship without even knowing it. Just because things are moving quick and maybe you're not able to really sit down and think, am I okay with this? Am I okay with how fast things are going? A lot of times when things feel really nice and you're in the honeymoon phase, you'll say things. Maybe you mean it in the moment, but it can feel like empty promises later on.
Like it feels different when it's like a reality that's actually going to happen
Yeah.
as opposed to like, oh, I want this one day.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I get that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, along those lines, how do you tell if like you're being delusional in the honeymoon phase? It's okay to like be in the honeymoon phase and still like get the relationship to be in a good place, but how do you know when you're like making decisions that are not great too early?
I don't know. I feel like when you start questioning things, I don't know.
In terms of how you know you're making decisions too early, I think if you're in a good situation with someone who's like genuinely dedicated to you and like committed to you as a person, I don't think that there would be like without external circumstances, I don't think there's going to be like a big time crunch to like jump on anything like super soon. Like if the situation's good, I think you can like take a minute to take a breath, and if you don't have that moment to kind of like consider your thoughts and kind of consider different perspectives of the situation, I think it's fair to say that that's potentially rushing into things and you don't know the full picture of it.
Yeah. I think that's great, because when you're with someone who is really supportive of you and you really get along together, they probably won't rush you. Like if you need some time to like think about things and want to go a little slower, like they'll be okay with that. And then I was also thinking that a lot of times when you make decisions in the honeymoon period, if like, and how you know maybe you're making bad choices is if your friends think you've changed in some way. And so all of a sudden, like it's changed, like your character feels different. Like these decisions that you're making doesn't feel like what the old Ethan would have made.
But that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. Like, are you saying, because you could have positive changes in a short amount of time, and like,
yeah,
you know, you're not supposed to stay the same person that you are like forever and ever and ever.
Yes, I totally agree. But I also think change usually happens slow. And when change happens too fast, it's either you're putting up on a show and it's not genuine change, or it can be like really jarring for you. Even if you like seem okay with the change, just having change happen that drastically can be really stressful on you. And so I think it's important in these moments to hear what your friends think and get their feedback. But the main thing is if you're acting different. I think if you're acting different to them, it's a sign that you're making decisions that either you haven't fully thought through and you're acting like a different person, or you're making decisions that the real you deep inside is not going to really like later down the line. Okay. What about like for a couple in a relationship that moves a lot slower? What are the pros and cons behind that?
I feel like that relationship would like literally be the definition of like both of them are just trying to self-maximize. They're both just like wasting each other's time. They're just like not ready to commit because they're like, well, I'm waiting to see like the day that you mess up so I could like leave and find something better. And like, I don't want to speak for all the girls out there, but I'm just going to say that scenario usually works like against girls more, because like, you know, we just age differently and like things like that. So I feel like a slower moving couple is like also a warning sign.
You kind of mentioned earlier that, and I kind of believe this too, genuine change is more like an evolutionary scale where we evolve kind of slowly. And I do believe that people change over the course of their life, but I don't think that genuine change happens really fast. So I think if you take longer to get to know someone, then you kind of get to see like that evolutionary change pace like take place in front of you, and you're able to evaluate as we change, like at this like slow pace, are we still being compatible for one another, and are all those same principles that like really drew us to each other kind of keeping pace as we're like finding a new version of ourselves over a long course of time.
Yeah, I could totally see that. And then like as you go on in your relationship, and through more time, you're just gonna see them in different situations, and even if they haven't changed, you get to see how they react in different scenarios and understand how you guys work together. And so there is a lot of benefit from taking things slower. I was gonna say sometimes you take things slower and maybe you aren't necessarily self-maximizing. I think a lot of times, like when you start dating when you're young, you don't really know what you want. And it takes a long time to figure that out.
That's fair.
And then also, I think sometimes in relationships, when you get comfortable and you just like the current pace, and maybe you just haven't thought about talking about serious topics like settling down or what your futures could look like together. And so that makes the relationship go slower.
True.
And I personally think, and I'm curious to hear how you guys would react, that sometimes going too slow and not having those conversations can be harmful. So,
I totally agree.
Oh, really?
Obviously.
Zane, do you agree?
Like going too slow and not having like in-depth conversations about
About like what your goal is and like where it's going.
Yeah. Or like even like what you want in the relationship.
Yeah, it's just like perpetually dating, like never like a relationship, but you're just happy seeing each other.
Right. I think a lot of people fall in the camp where they're like, I just don't want to be lonely. I don't want to be single. And so just being with someone is better than the alternative.
Right.
And so for them, I think they would disagree with that statement, that sometimes it can be harmful if you're not going anywhere in that relationship and there's no clear direction. So I guess even thinking about like a relationship that's moving towards marriage, how do you even begin to think about that? How do you think about when you're ready and like even decipher if a relationship is headed in that direction?
I feel like Zane was sort of talking about this when he was saying that, like, you know, people are like growing together and you're seeing how they react in different situations. But I feel like where a lot of people like make a mistake is like they want to like test that other person under every possible scenario under the sun. They want to say, I have to try to live with you. I have to try this. I have to try that. And it's like, you have literally no idea what the future is going to hold. Like, you could be super, super rich and like money can change people, or you could be super, super broke. Like, there could be like an illness. Like, I feel like can't wait forever and like keep testing forever. So like the way that I decide if I'm ready to be with somebody is just to see if, like, first of all, if they have like, you know, the basic things that I'm looking for. And then beyond that, it's just like, do I like their company? Like, am I happy when I'm with them? Or is it like a sigh of relief when they're gone and it's like, all right, finally some peace? Because at the end of the day, like, I feel like I've said this before on the podcast, I really, really feel like love is supposed to be peaceful. Like, and when I was younger, I didn't believe that. I am the queen of all toxic relationships because they're fun. They're very addictive, like the hot and cold, whatever. But I feel like at this stage of my life, like, if I feel like I find peace with somebody that you know, also checks off a lot of boxes, like, I feel like that is when I know that I'm ready, personally.
Wow. I have a hard time with that because I've been in relationships where there's fighting and it gets really ugly, and you know about this, Sonia. And I feel like even if there is a lot of peace, people change over time. And so even if you get married, there can be fighting, and 100%. It's actually like pretty inevitable. And so I guess maybe the way I think about it for myself is the person that I want to marry, they have to like they have to check off the deal breakers.
Okay.
And there has to like be no doubt about that.
Right.
But then the other thing that, and my friend has given me this advice, and I think I need to identify the things that are hard in our relationship, and I need to decide, am I willing to work through those things with this person? And if I am, I think that's how I know that I'm ready.
Like, you're ready to accept them with their flaws.
Yeah.
And like, there's nobody else you'd rather work through those problems with.
That's right. Yeah.
I think that's fair. I think from a personal standpoint, I typically don't get involved. I feel like in relationships and like this, I don't know. This might sound like, oh, that's like basic logic or something to some people. But in a sense, it's like I don't go into a relationship with the thought of like this is gonna end. But I think some people do, like, oh, it's like a short-term hookup, or like I know this is gonna. I feel like by the time like I'm ready to like commit to like seeing someone, it's usually with the thought process of like this is indefinite. Like this could potentially, like, and I not necessarily put like marriage label on it or whatever, but like I'm seeing like the way that I'm like committing to someone is like this is like the path forward from here on out.
Yeah.
And so I think what takes that level of commitment from like I see being with them like indefinitely, and which in concept is like marriage, but basically to marriage is kind of like you said, going through like different situations, seeing how you grow, and like really confirming that like with this evolutionary change scale that we see compatibility for certain, like, or not necessarily for certain, but like our best educated guess at that, like over the long haul.
I guess my question for this is like, to what extent?
Yeah.
Because I think that's what I've come across a lot also, like just like talking to people, and it's like, to what extent are you going to be able to like judge the other person? Like, again, we'll go back to like, there's so many unpredictable scenarios that could come up. Like, it's almost like, you know, by putting this other person like through these trials, or like waiting it out long enough so that you can like go through different scenarios with them, it's almost like, I don't know, you're looking for something where it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Instead of like, because like even if it works through all your, like I think I know people that have been engaged for 10 years, and like that just like blows my mind, because it's like, what do you think you're gonna like find out in the 11th year of dating that you don't think you've already seen in 10 years? And like for sure when you put a marriage label on it, like the reason why I think people are so afraid of it is because it is scary. It's like a whole different level of commitment. So like just, I personally in my relationships, like going from like talking to someone to like boyfriend, girlfriend, even that much, like putting a label on it puts a lot of pressure, and it like changes the relationship to a certain degree. So I feel like, I don't know, I guess what I'm asking you guys is like, to what extent are you going to test the other person? Like when have you seen enough change, and when have you seen like, yeah, like when is enough? Like, Ethan's like, you're on your own.
Yeah.
He's like, all right.
This is your show.
Yeah, I will say, like, I'm being a little bit picky about the word choice here. I don't know if I like the word test, because in a sense too, I feel like I don't know. In a sense, it's almost like innocent until proven guilty. So it's not like I'm like trying to like throw stuff at them and like make them trip up.
Okay, fine.
It's more of just like,
I can take back my word of test,
yeah.
Sure. But I'm just saying, to what extent? Like, do you in your mind have like a, okay, I have to like see how they deal with like a death in the family, and then I'll know if they're stable enough. Or I have to see how they deal with me when I'm having a mental breakdown, and then I'll know if it's enough. Or like, do you have like a quantifiable thing, or is it like never ending until it's like, oh, okay, I feel like I'm ready now?
I don't think it's never ending per se.
Yeah.
But I think people are complex and people are different, and to say like, oh, it's this check mark, this check mark, this check mark, I think, yeah, everyone's unique, and so to evaluate everyone based off a given set of like check marks, I think that threshold for
different people
like,
is
marriage
different.
is going to be based on the individual person that you're like,
That's totally
seeing
fair.
and like working with.
Yeah. I think to build off what Zane is saying, I feel like if it feels like a never-ending list, you're in trouble. That's already a warning sign that you're being a self-maximizer, and that
I love this word.
enough is not enough.
Yeah.
And so it's really tricky to answer that question, Sonia. Like Zane was saying, everyone is different. I think I would say that as long as I've seen them in, I don't know exactly what number, but let's say like 5 big things. So
Okay.
I know how they are with their friends. Like I know who their closest friends are. I've had some interaction with them. I've seen them with their family. They see me with my family. So those like go back and forth. I know who they are at work. And like
Work.
because sometimes like a person can be different at work, and like what are their goals for their career?
That's
And then how do they treat people who are strangers, who are like wait staff, or like a homeless person on the street? And then how have I seen them in conflict? And are we like constantly fighting, and is this person, when they say that they forgive me, actually like forgiven me? So I think like with those things, like if I've seen those big things, that's when I know that I'm okay. And
Okay.
maybe it's around 5 big things.
Okay. I feel like I am gonna say for that last one that you put up, I feel like that's like a thing you kind of have to like grow together. That's not really like a thing you can just like stand to the side and like judge how they're gonna resolve a conflict.
Right.
I feel like, yeah, so that one's like maybe like a tough one, but I'm glad that you at least gave like a quantifiable kind of list, because not to like, it's just because I feel like a lot of girls out there are confused because they're in like really, really long relationships, and they're like, okay, like, do I stay, or like, is he gonna even make a move, or like, what is he thinking? Because a lot of times guys don't even communicate that they have this intention of wanting to marry. Like, because like I remember my first relationship ended because I thought the guy was not going to marry me, because I said that word so much, and like he used to just be like, oh, I'm gonna get married in my 30s, da da da, and I was like, but at the same time, the thing that I didn't pay attention to was he would always be asking me to come visit his family, and like there was like other signs. So I feel like maybe it's like a difference in like the way that guys and girls like communicate what they want. Like maybe meeting his family, like you said, that was your number 2. So maybe that was like him going through his checklist. But I feel like as girls, like, and again, like maybe it doesn't matter so much when you're like super young, or if you're not thinking about marriage, but if that is something that they're thinking about, like I feel like verbal confirmation that like, hey, like I do see you headed in this direction. I just like, you know, either any time, or like, let's just like enjoy each other's company for a little bit and like figure it out. But like, I personally wouldn't want to invest time into something that like, if I don't feel like the other person wants to take it anywhere, because that feels like a waste of my time.
To add to that, like I don't like if having like that like dialogue or something is like something that you're scared of, and like it's something that you like are like, oh my god, like I don't know if to move forward or not move forward. I think if you're like actually serious about getting married to someone, sure, maybe the concept of the dialogue might be scary, but like the fact that like you should be willing to have like, not afraid to like, oh, I want to talk about this, and like, oh, like I'm not going to be ashamed if I'm talking about this for the second time today, or like I'm bringing it up like, almost every day. Like I think being on the same page and like having an open dialogue is a super important and fundamental part to like a really strong standing relationship. So I understand that like in theory it should be scary, but if it's like scary or like, oh, are they going to like actually commit to me? I think that's just something that you shouldn't, like I said, I understand in theory how that's like difficult to like have that conversation, but with the right person for marriage, I think you should be willing to like freely have that conversation almost whenever you want.
Yeah, I think we've identified how to even know if you're ready to get married. Are like, have you identified your deal breakers and made sure that they've met those, and you have the same values, you have the same goals and want the same thing in life? And then have you seen them in those 5 different types of situations, and are you wanting to see them in those situations? And I think that's a good way to even know if marriage is something that you want at the moment. Something that you brought up, Zane, that I want to poke at a little bit, and just like, is you mentioned how even before you get into a relationship, you're trying to get to see them in different situations, so that if you get into a relationship, you already know this is someone that you see things going the distance with. Like, marriage aside, you see this as someone that you're serious about. But then with that kind of mindset, does that mean that it takes a long time? Like, you kind of have to become friends with a person first, get to know them, and then you're willing to like take that step? And I'm just wondering if, because Sonia and I don't think guys and girls can just be friends. And I'm wondering,
we're against that on this podcast.
I think like
strongly
that approach works for you.
It's a great point. You're talking about dating stuff, and this is a dating podcast. And I'll preface, if I didn't preface this earlier, like my dating experience is quite limited. I feel like because of the way like I approach things, but I think for me, sometimes I struggle to have like a fundamental baseline level of attraction to someone to even be like, this is interesting. Until I know them, which I understand that's like the purpose of dating, but I think just historically for me, there's not like even like the interest to like take the first step of like, oh, let's make this like a formalized date. But it's something that like, I think should be more open to in the future. Okay. But just historically have been like, I don't know, unwilling to like push myself to go, like, I don't know, pursue a date with someone if I like feel like there's not even interest.
Wait, so do you wait until there's like a small amount of interest, or do you wait until you're like, because like I've talked about on this podcast, whenever I've asked people out, it's like I can't hold it in. Like I like them and I'm so nervous, like I can't be around them unless I ask them out. It's like, do you wait until like the tipping point? Because you're saying you don't have interest in the beginning, but like at least for me, when I see somebody and I like them, there's already that initial interest. If I was like, maybe if I was braver, I could ask them right off the bat, but like, you know, I don't. And so we keep hanging out and we keep hanging out, and then it's just like a tipping point, and then I have to ask, and like if I have to be rejected, like so be it. Like, so how is it like?
Yeah, I think historically, and this is something I feel like I've gotten better about, and I am proud of myself a little bit for it, in the sense that I think when I was, I don't know, first going through this, I feel like I waited like a long time, and I was like, oh, like I'm not gonna like voice it, like, but I internally I'm like, I know there's now interest, but like I'm just like not gonna say anything,
Okay.
and like I let it build up.
I see.
And I feel like that, at least for me, is problematic.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I've gotten a lot better, especially recently, about like the first moment is kind of like, okay, like there's like a little bit of interest now. It's like, okay, now we gotta like
We can date and we can explore.
It's like it's like I vocalize it as soon as it is, as opposed to like internalizing and keeping it like quiet to myself
Until it builds up.
And like I don't know, to your extent too, about like how do you like, it does this mean like you become friends with people or stuff before you
Right.
Yes, I'd say historically like a little bit, yes. And so I think the fundamental key to like basically, I'm not like, I feel like my mindset is not necessarily I'm like trying to become friends with someone to date them. It's more of just like
You're getting to know them.
I'm getting to know them, I'm getting more closer, and there is that.
But without the
level
label of
attract-
like dating.
Yeah, I got but like I said, I think a key thing, I think what I found, like a lot of times, these people who I'm like becoming friends with, and like there's like maybe like a little bit of interest in, like I feel like by voicing things like earlier on, like the fundamental part of any person I've kind of like seen seriously is that like the baseline level is that I feel like there's a really strong friendship and a really strong connection.
Totally.
So like no matter what, like that is what's important. So even if it's like, and there are certain situations too, I feel like where it's like I've taken so long to like vocalize anything that's like, oh, like come on, like we've been like friends for like such a long, like you've like very solidified that like you are a friend, and like maybe there's interest or something like at the start, but like you didn't say anything for like a years, like long time scales, like you're very clearly a friend. And so I think
I've been there.
And so I think fundamentally too, like at that point it's like I don't know, like I said, their baseline level is that they're really important to my life, and so I think being able to like still keep them, like have a person that you're able to say like, oh, like I want to take this to the next level, but if it doesn't go to the next level, like baseline, there's someone who I want in my life.
Okay.
Something that I value is like being pretty important.
Yeah.
Wait, this is gonna sound superficial after everything you said, but I gotta ask for the podcast. Are you on team friends first?
Or team ask them out first.
Yeah, for me personally, 100% team friends first. Like I said, that could
Even though
change.
it backfired.
That could,
And you're trying to change it.
Even though it backfired. Now, I'm not saying I'm trying to change it. I'm saying I'm becoming more open to the idea of changing.
Okay. It's more
but-
comfortable to be
and
friends first. Yeah.
More comfortable, and I feel like I have just like a much stronger connection. Like I have, like tried to go on like, I don't know,
Like random
dates
yeah.
with people before, and I feel like it just feels like the connection's not as emotional, and it's like, or like it just like it doesn't like, I don't know, feel as authentic. It feels
That's
a little
fair.
bit more like there's like an underlying like, I don't know, intention that's like kind of governing the whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah. To be honest, I have a lot of respect for that
I
approach.
can't really disagree with it. Like it makes sense.
Yeah, and so we've actually talked about this. Watch episode 12. We talk about being friends first and then getting into a relationship, and I love like the arc of what you've been saying, Zane, because I think you've identified a key point where if you realize that you're getting feelings for someone, not keeping it in, I think that's key.
That's the timing is everything.
And makes it okay, like even
To be
being
friends first. I completely agree.
And then also like the way you do it to tell them how you feel. I feel like there's a way, and Sonia and I, we've been talking about this for a long time. There's a way to keep the stakes low.
Yeah.
And you don't have to just say like, hey, I like you. Like
I love you, be mine.
Yeah, like let me take you on all these dates.
Yeah.
It can just, you can ask them to hang out.
Yeah,
see
subtle.
them on more one-on-one situations, but then like know that if you're gonna take that route, you're gonna have to like ask them out and
Eventually.
and be clear.
Yeah.
But So there's definitely both sides, and I think you can do both well. And Zane, you've made a really great case for
the other side.
Why being friends first is like really good and creates a really strong foundation.
That's true.
So
All about
really
the timing, though.
appreciate that. Yeah. Do you guys have any last thoughts about marriage and trying to time it? And
Nothing more on
When
self-maximizing,
you're
Ethan, but
ready.
we're going to revisit this topic, I'm sure, in the future.
Yeah, a lot. What about you, Zane?
No, I think we covered.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're in a good
How about
place.
you?
I'm good too.
Okay.
And so now we're gonna transition into our end segment, and we're bringing back Dapper Slap. I feel like we kind of had to, just because we all get into some weird situations sometimes, and you need to slap your friends before they end up marrying someone too soon or too late.
Okay.
The first situation, Zane, you know how this works, so
How this works.
We're doing thumbs up,
Yeah.
thumbs down, or in the middle.
right.
Just reminding myself.
So, very first scenario, dating someone in a different life stage. If our friend told us that that's what they're doing and who they're dating, are we dapping or slapping that?
I'm ready.
I'm ready.
Okay.
All right. 3, 2, 1.
Oh, okay. So, Sana and I, we're saying neutral. Zane, you're saying
Start
slap.
us off, Zane.
Yeah, I don't know. I in my head I'm feeling neutral, but I feel like I don't know. The point of this is to kind of give like a more definitive answer. So
We're too soft. Yeah, it
People
is.
pleasers.
Overall, I'm trying to be like
Yeah.
internally. I feel like there are certain exceptions where like
Okay.
100% where it's
I'm
like
with you.
where it's like okay, like is different stage of life, is that always bad? Like no, I think they're like can totally be. But I'd say in general, a different stage of life in my head means that you're like kind of taking like different paths, and sometimes, like I said, if we're seeing change in how things are evolving, I think it's sometimes tough to like feel like you're starting out on like common ground or like the same page if you're at a place where you're kind of going in opposite directions and then like hoping to reconvene later on.
Yeah.
I feel like your
Like I
answer.
said, I don't think that's a one size fits all.
No, your answer is making me change my mind. I'm kind of going to go slap.
I'm also slapping.
Fine, I started off.
And all I want to say is the right person at the wrong time is still the wrong person. And so it is a slap for me. Because the timing is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're in a different life stage, you either wait, and that can work, but then in the moment, you just can't really move forward until you're on the same page.
I was like neutral because I thought there are conditions and like, you know, times and situations where like two different life stages could be compatible. Like if you're a girl and you're marrying somebody who's like a little bit older and like has a more established career, like I don't see any problems with that. But I don't know, maybe people have different opinions. But for the most part, I think I agree with you guys, and I'll stick with the slap.
You see, like, bringing Zane on has just made us agree more. So, I don't know if you accomplished your goal, Sonia. Okay, next situation. Dating a sibling's friend. Dapper slap.
I already know.
We've hinted about this on the podcast before. We're going to say our official views, though, so pressure's on.
All right, are you guys ready? 3, 2, 1.
Whoa, I told you.
think-
With Zane on, it's just like even hiding. Okay, well, you want to go first, Sonia?
Oh, for like why it's a...
Dap.
Well, we all agree. Because you already, like, you're so close to your, like, friend, and, like, by dating their sibling, you're just part of the family even more. I feel like there's nothing wrong with it. I feel like the only downside could be if your friendship isn't super strong, and if you guys break up, you lose a friend. But, like, I guess I would only dap it if you guys actually have a good foundation in your friendship.
Okay. When you were dating your friend's sibling,
This was in the 5th grade.
did she get mad at you?
I feel like initially there was some like resistance, and like we kind of kept it on the DL, but after a while she like really like it grew on her, and like she liked that I was always around, and like, and her brother was always around, so
Yeah.
yeah.
So, I don't know about you guys, but like in books and movies growing up, it always felt like such a big no-no.
Like a forbidden fruit.
Yeah, and so I'm wondering why like some people would be uncomfortable like with their friend dating their sibling.
In my head, I think it's totally fine with the one asterisk that like I feel like you'd have to have a conversation with your sibling about it beforehand.
Ooh.
Oh,
Like, so a dialogue just to make sure, like, hey, like, is this okay? And if it's not okay, then it's like, that's really bad. But as long as there's, I think the key thing to most things in life is just, like, clear communication.
Yeah.
So I think, I don't know, in movies, I feel like it feels taboo in a sense because it's almost, like, backstabby in a sense where you're, like, if it's a sibling's friend, you're kind of going around the sibling
you don't
to
talk
the
to
friend
them.
without, like, communication there. I think as long as you communicate it there, and just like, keeping people in the loop about, like, what's going on, I think
Yeah.
that's what makes it okay.
Very well said. Okay, and then the very last situation, getting married while being in school. So you're an undergrad, you're in grad school, a PhD student. Is this a dap or slap? Getting married?
Like you are in school or your partner is in school?
At least one of you is in
At
school.
least one of you is in school?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think in this situation, we're saying both of you are in school because we're already saying slap to a different life stage.
Okay. Okay, so you're both in school still.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm ready.
Yeah, me too.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Whoa, okay. I thought I was making some juicy topics here. Okay, Zane, why don't you start us off this time?
Yeah, so I was, for context, I am in a PhD program currently, and I think it's kind of fun. I was expecting more controversy in this question.
Yeah.
I feel like I know people who've like gotten married or like had kids and stuff during their PhD, and it's been like super fulfilling, and it's everything they could have wanted. For me personally, I feel like there's a lot going on, and I feel like a lot of, especially, for like higher education, a lot of that time you're putting into higher education is like benefit of like the knowledge for yourself. And I think higher education is a time where you kind of get to be a little bit more selfish in your life and kind of like explore like what's intellectually stimulating for you, what's like what are you really passionate about in life and like want to pursue. And I think if you're kind of like dedicating, I don't know, I think, like I said, for me personally, it's like if I'm dedicating like a big part of, like if I'm, setting up a marriage or like a big thing, like that's not necessarily like focusing on like what am I figuring out that I'm super passionate about, it's gonna like probably take a little bit away from me, or if it doesn't take a little bit away from me and I keep devoting my whole kind of like, or a big chunk of my life to that, then I'm not devoting enough to my partner or the other person.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think we want to preface what you just said by saying that your DMs are still open. Right? So like even if you're not trying to like get married right now, like if you like Zane, and you shouldn't let that hold you back. That was a joke.
It was not.
No, it's not. And but I think for me, like how I would answer this question is, I think unless you're doing, if you're not doing grad school, so we're talking about like high school or you're in college, I would say you probably shouldn't get married then. But I actually think like if you're in grad school doing a PhD, I'm actually for getting married.
Okay.
And I say that kind of going off what you were just saying, Zane. I feel like when you choose to do a PhD and like really dive into academia and learning like that, I feel like you're not just going to stop when you graduate with your PhD. And so it's going to be even harder to get into a relationship after the PhD because you're in that life. Like maybe now you're trying to become a professor or become a postdoc. And I really think having a partner with you, especially someone who's married to you, there's that level of commitment, can really help carry you through the lows. And when you've have a foundation with someone who's been with you through the lows, you're set up way better for the future because you've already seen them in the trenches. And so I actually think there's no problem like by the time you're doing a PhD.
I said slap mostly because of like, I think like finances are like a big part of like a really successful relationship. I'm not saying you have to be like super, super rich, but like in order to live comfortably, I feel like if you're in school, that's just like really, really hard. And then, you know, typically when people get married, they want to have kids and like start a family. And I feel like if you try to do that on like a student, like you're saying PhD, even on a PhD salary, like I feel like that's just really, really hard.
Yeah.
So I do get what you mean. Like you kind of grow together, and if you do get married, you know, when you're still in school, they can support you and like kind of be there for you and like help you out. But I feel like practically it might be kind of difficult.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's why I slapped.
So one of the reasons why I slapped too is I feel like getting married is great. There are challenges that come with it. We'll save that for another time. But
Wait, are you getting married anytime soon?
oh, maybe. But then everyone has some big questions. No, if I was getting married, I would actually announce it on the podcast.
Wow.
No, I don't know. You guys keep guessing. But I was just going to say that I don't want anyone to like be married and look back on their life and say that they had regrets.
Oh yeah,
and
definitely.
I just think that when you're in school, in the middle of school, and maybe getting married is challenging enough that you don't finish your college degree and even getting your high school diploma, it can just make things a little harder going forward, and maybe that's something that you've always wanted for yourself. So in that case, if that's something that you want for yourself, just wait a little bit to at least graduate, and then you can get married right away. But it becomes a lot harder to be a student and also a husband or a wife. And like what I just said, like being okay to like get married while doing a PhD is like, I don't want to put any pressure on you, Zane. You take your time.
Don't worry.
I have no doubt you'll find someone like now or later on. Okay, so we'll wrap the episode up right there. Since you are our special guest, Zane, flew all the way from Boston.
Just for this podcast.
Do you have any general advice for the audience before we go? It can be life advice, relationship advice, but maybe just something that you want to share. If you don't, we'll cut this part out.
I think something that I usually tell my siblings, and if I don't know if they're kind of like figuring things out in life, and kind of like ties into some things we said earlier. If you're kind of like I don't know, struggling with like what you want from life or like what you want from a relationship, I think at least choosing a direction and like setting forth on a path and saying like this is what I'm doing right now is like the most critical step. I think if you like just kind of like flounder like oh my god, like I don't even know what to do, that's going to be problematic. But if you at least set a course of direction, say this is what I'm committing to for right now, and like travel on that, I think that's good. And that's not to say like you're setting a course in like a permanent direction. Like our courses can change, but I think just having a vision for what you want something to be at that given point in life is really important.
Amen. That's awesome. Thank you. And thank you for taking the time to be on this podcast. You're taking the time out to do this. We really appreciate that. And thank you to everyone who's listening right now. We really
Near or
appreciate
far.
it.
Thanks for the invite.
Oh, of course. Like you are our first guy guest, and that's a huge honor. Our very first.
True.
And so we've had 4 guests already. You're our 5th and first guy. So we're really lucky to have you.
I feel honored.
Do that. Yeah. And with that, we'll wrap it up there, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode.